Have you ever wondered where the television signal you are watching is coming from?
Welcome to True North.
Good evening and welcome to Maine Watch.
Welcome to From the Vault, a celebration of 60 years of Maine Public Television. 1947 is known as the Year Maine Burned. In October of that year, nearly 200 fires burned throughout the state, eventually destroying 1,000 homes and leaving 2,500 people homeless. On this episode, we will look at the fire that ravaged Mount Desert Island for nearly a month, wiping out scores of homes, businesses, and large hotels. To do that, we will revisit the magazine show True North, which ran from 1995 to 2002. The series had several hosts over the years: Don Carrigan, Patsy Wiggins, and finally Peggy Keyser. It traveled throughout the state, telling stories of people, places, and things. On this episode, we will feature a few different stories from that series. Besides the 1947 Bar Harbor fire, we will check out a beanhole bean supper in Lincoln, visit with an 89-year-old machinist in Belfast, profile John Logan of Aroostook County's Potato Picker Special, and lots more. But we will begin with space aliens in Houlton. Let's start with a segment from 1997. This is True North.
Often when you travel down the roads of Maine, you come across a particular house that immediately tells you something, but you're not sure what, about the people who live inside. It could be an unusual house color or shape, whatever. Well, when videographer Nick Woodward and Don Carrigan were traveling through Houlton, they passed a house that they just had to stop at. And it truly was a close encounter of a different kind.
Houlton really is a pretty town, a place with lovely tree-lined streets, plenty of public improvements, a long tradition of civic pride, and aliens. Yes, aliens. At the top of a hill overlooking town and country sits the small empire of Jerry Cardone.
Well, I ain't got much.
Oh, you don't have much.
I don't have much. It's just, trying to decorate the place and a big mess here.
And if ever the term one of a kind could be used to describe someone, that someone would surely be Jerry Cardone.
I'm building what they call dinosaur land. I'm building a dinosaur land here, and it has involved with UFOs, and I'm into UFO art, and I'm into dinosaurs, I'm into Egyptian art. I like to go into different periods of, of things, of the art.
So what, you have other things? Jerry came to Maine from Connecticut about 20 years ago. He had been a baker, but says the work caused him to get sick. So he moved to Houlton for the clean air, he says.
You got everything here. You got palm trees over there.
Oh yeah, I was trying to make this like Arizona. I got cactuses all over the place. It's growing like a jungle now.
A night class at the high school 9 years ago put Jerry into the art world.
Wow. This is the one that gave me my name.
What do you mean?
They call me the Dinosaur Man, and this is where I got my name from. I built this dinosaur as a sculpture, and I was afraid of it because I thought it might fall on me and splash me, and it'll kill me if it'll fall on me.
Yeah.
And I did this here. I never finished it because I was trying to get a loan from the arts,
Yeah.
so I can get the concrete to put on there. I was going to build a whole bunch of them. And I was hoping to get a grant from the arts, and they're cheap. In Maine, they treat the artists like garbage.
Dinosaur art isn't quite what they're after.
No, they after, I don't know what they're after,
But Jerry's world doesn't stop with Dinosaur Land, because he also has a passion for space aliens and UFOs. They decorate the roof and yard, and they occupy his mind.
There was one up there that was landed. One time I went down the 4th of July, I went to the fireworks, and I was coming up with a lot of people. I walked in the back, and there was one laying there like that, hovering right on the ground, and it was egg-shaped, on the bottom, and it had like the whole thing lighted up green. And then all of a sudden it just took up and it went down to the town, and nobody seemed to see it.
Jerry, you see, has a lot of experience with aliens. He's been abducted by them.
Oh, when I was a kid, I had the first experience I had with them that time. You know, they were chasing me all over the city and everything because they wanted to catch me, and twice. And the third time they caught me, they beamed right into the house, and they caught me with my underwears. And I got kind of mad because they beamed me up in my underwears, you know.
At least wanted to be dressed, huh?
Yeah, and I had experience with them and stuff, you know.
Huh.
And so I always had it behind my mind, you know. I always wanted to be an alien artist.
So when you take the UFOs and the aliens and the dinosaurs, a few abominable snowmen, and add some totem poles and other Indian art, you find Jerry Cardone has built quite a world here on the hill.
And I don't know if this is a sensitive question or not, but what do your neighbors think of all this?
Oh, my neighbors, they think I'm a wacko, some of them. They think I'm a weirdo. They pass by and say, hey, the weirdo on the hill. The town, I don't know, the town gives me a lot of hard times, you know. They don't like what I'm doing.
And as his fame spreads, Jerry may be getting the last laugh. He says more tourists are stopping all the time to admire his artwork. Even his old teacher has seen it.
Oh, yeah, she come around a couple of times to look at it.
What'd she say?
I didn't teach you that. You know?
No one taught Jerry how to sing either, but that's one of the ways he earns a living. Yes, Jerry Cardone is also an entertainer.
Can you do one?
Yeah. You want me to sing a song? I go,
Sure.
and the cattle are trousers, and the coyote is howling. How where the dog is bold.
You might say the road through Jerry's world has many turns.
They want me to live like normal. They say they want me to live like, not like an artist, like a Christian. And I'm just an artist, minding my business, just doing my artwork. And the spurs are singling, and the cowboy is singing, lonesome cattle. I think that I have like an art talent from God. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm like an instrument, like a tool. You know, and every time it says, hey, Lord, you know, I don't like artwork because artists are always starving. Artists go like Michelangelo fell down and broke his head and back, and artists, you know, you die, you're famous after you die and you become great and you make money. But I like, you know, cash and carry, you know, and I don't really like to be. I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking.
What am I thinking?
Oh, he lived out in Bangor. They would have had him in that place over there ready. See you laughing?
No, I'm not thinking that.
See, yeah.
I'll be honest. I am thinking that I'm glad you're not right next door to me.
Yeah. See?
But
You know, got all kinds of yodel. Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Here's another one I was doing. A tridactyl right here. The flying bird. I made that out of wood.
Now, Jerry, I have to tell you, yodeling and dinosaurs and UFOs is quite a combination.
Well, yeah, I'm an all-around artist.
Yeah.
I do a little bit of all. You know, I don't try to stay into one thing. You know, I'm an all-around artist. I try to do a little bit of everything, so I won't get bored. See?
I wouldn't think there's much chance of that.
Yeah.
No, not much chance at all. And probably the neighbors won't get bored either. I'm Don Carrigan for True North.
And the cattle, the trousers, and the coyotes.
From Houlton down east to Bar Harbor, 50 years after the Great Fire. But first, throughout this season of True North, we will take you down some of Maine's less traveled roads to meet some of Maine's most interesting and unique people. Now, with that in mind, we've sent our friend Steve Falloon on the road. He makes his first stop in Caribou at the Coast Guard station.
We're here today at Coast Guard Station Caribou, and I'm with Dave Lown, who is officer in charge. Dave, I'm not getting any sense that there's salt in the air. Why a Coast Guard station in the middle of Aroostook County?
Well, the reason we're here is to generate a radio frequency signal that's used by mariners and aviators anywhere off the coast of Maine and off the coast of Canada.
Okay, all right. How many boats do you have, and whose job is it to take care of them?
Well, we have one boat, and it's a small canoe. I think it's a Coleman canoe. And as the officer in charge, I'm responsible for it.
Very good. Now, how does one get stationed here? The rumor is that if you've sunk a boat during regular duty somewhere else, you get sent here. Is there any truth to that at all?
Not as far as I know. When I left my last unit, it was still floating, and so if it sank after I left, I can't take any responsibility for it.
Dave, thanks very much for your time.
You're welcome.
Patsy?
And I have a feeling that we'll be hearing a lot more from Steve along the way. It was the fall of 1947 when more than 200 forest fires scorched dozens of Maine towns. Among the areas devastated by the fire was Maine's crowning jewel, Bar Harbor. Bill Moraldo takes us back 50 years to the year Maine burned.
Already there are about 1,500 people, refugees here from the Mount Desert area. The Red Cross, however, tells me that they are set up so that they can handle as many as 6,000 people in this one town and small villages surrounding it as they come in.
On October 17th, 1947, the call came in to the Bar Harbor Fire Department. A small marsh grass fire was burning 7 miles from the outskirts of town. By the time it was out, 17,000 acres had been blackened. 237 island homes were gone, and half of Bar Harbor was destroyed. Mount Desert Island would never be the same. Even though half a century has passed since the fire swept through here, the forest itself is only at a midpoint in its recovery. The needle-bearing conifers still acquiesce to the faster-growing aspen and birch. Perhaps in another 50 years it will have reached maturity, and the forest, in a sense, will have forgotten the fire of 1947. But the people who lived through it, they will never forget.
They've been eating sandwiches for days and days, as you know, and sandwiches, that's one thing that don't send in any more sandwiches. These people have stood all the sandwiches they can.
So this truck right here saw action in 1947.
Oh yes, absolutely, right in the midst.
Howell Burns and Henry Brown were college students at the time and had grown up on the island. News of the fire sent both of them rushing back home to assist the other volunteer firefighters.
It's just burnt in my mind, that huge wave, that fire just rolling, and a house, it exploded. It had to explode, it was gone while I'm telling this story.
Yeah, they claim it created its own wind even.
Yes, oh it did. It did, Henry.
Almost like a hurricane or whatever you want to call it.
It was strange. You'd hear this.
It's like a bunch of freight trains, everybody told me.
A bunch of freight trains or burners going.
It had to be a feeling almost of helplessness.
Absolutely. Hoses started to burn, even with water in them. The canvas on the hoses started to burn. The nozzle was so hot you couldn't hang on to it anyway. And we literally, thinking back on it now, we really ran for our lives.
In the background, you probably can hear sound of motors, all sorts of trucks here for firefighting, cars, and men all standing by in case the fire moves in this direction, so everyone has been alerted.
And so, show me where was your house?
It was right there.
Your
That's
house was
the
right here?
foundation of our house. We had a nice big...
Florence Ames was a telephone operator working the night shift as firemen battled the blaze. Her own home was among those destroyed by the flames.
You were going all night long. People knew the fire was coming, and they were calling in all night long. Where is it? Where is it? It was strange when they ordered us out. My two oldest sons were out watering the house down. And my oldest son came in and went right up on the 3rd floor. He came down with, ordinarily you'd think he might come down with a toy or something. He came down with his clarinet in one hand, violin in the other. And my youngest son, he didn't even pick up a toy. He had a brand new bike out in the yard, and that burned.
When will you forget?
Never. I'll never forget. The wharf was loaded. The pier in town was just loaded. And we just waited there patiently seeing the fire at a distance. It looked so much nearer than it was. And then finally they said that we could leave, and it was just a steady stream of cars right from the wharf right up to Ellsworth.
Now I must wait until it's
I mean, I know that boats are standing off in the harbor here to take the local people that are left in town. And beyond that, I guess we're just open to stop it here.
What did it look like to you?
I suppose, really, you can almost say the same idea as the atomic bomb that hit in Japan, really.
That fire was so hot, I literally say the rocks burnt. And it looked just like Henry said, it looked like Hiroshima. Exactly like
That's the only way you can describe when you see all those I
Ju-
mean, there were pictures everywhere, Barber Times, different newspapers, but...
Just nothing but chimneys, walls, down trees. It was terrible.
Actually, in our cellar, it was still smoldering. And it just looked terrible. You wondered what you were going to do.
Ellsworth fireman Joe Lucchini used his 8mm camera to film the devastation. Many of the family homes would be rebuilt, but several of the island's world-famous resort mansions were lost forever.
I guess probably that perhaps Henry, and I know myself, was used to the slower pace of the summer folks coming and getting into their cottages, and the butlers and maids and chauffeurs, and that's what we would see. And today it's altogether different. It's a faster pace, and that's what I see most. And I think this is a direct result of the times
And the fire.
And the fire, yeah.
Each time on my leaving home, I run back to my mother's house.
Would you say at this moment this is the worst fire on the island now, Mr. James? I believe at this moment it possibly is the worst fire as far as I know.
Feel this sky fall down upon
By the way, some of the film footage you just saw in that piece had never been broadcast before now. Amazing footage. If you've never been to a bean supper, you really are missing something. Bean suppers, after all, are a vital part of life in Maine. Perhaps the granddaddy of all is the River Drivers' Supper in Lincoln, held every July for the last 50 years. More than 1,000 people turn out for this old-fashioned feast. It's pretty much the same menu. It's prepared the same way by some of the same people who've been doing it for years. It is definitely a tasty tradition, enjoyed by all.
We're cooking 250 pounds of beans.
You wonder how these things begin. Traditions, most of them, require that somebody do a lot of hard work. In Lincoln, the work is done by the men and women of the Congregational Church. Their tradition, the River Drivers' Supper. It just may be the biggest bean supper in the state of Maine.
Just put the coals on and wait until we get these done, and then lay the flat metal on.
The men bake the beans, the old way, the good way, in the ground overnight. Harley Sproul is the bean master.
I flavor the beans. I do the mixing of the beans.
Okay.
I took the job over from a man that was in his 80s and was retiring. Many people like to have their beans sweetened, and this gentleman that I took this over from never sweetened the beans. So I haven't sweetened the beans, and people want me to, but I just feel that this is a tradition.
What's the secret to good potato salad?
I didn't know. Mixing it with your hands, I guess. They put rubber gloves on and really get into it. Mix it.
We use one of
The women make the potato salad and the coleslaw. Has there been potato salad and coleslaw at it every year for the 50 years?
As far as I know.
Wow. The supper has been held every year in what used to be Daisy Ludden's field on the banks of the Penobscot River. It's a place where the old-time river drivers really used to camp during their annual log drives. And one of the prime fuels on those log drives was beans.
That was the main course, beans and...
Carl Lancaster, 99 years old, worked on the river drives as a young man. He ate plenty of beans.
Did the guys on the drive ever complain, oh God, beans again?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Beans, beans, beans. Beans till you turn green. Eat baked beans on Saturday night.
In Maine, there's just something about baked beans. Ask the people who bake them.
Years ago, beans was a cheap meal. You see, at home when I was growing up, we had beans twice a week, Wednesday nights and Saturday nights.
I think a lot of people, as he's saying, grew up the tradition of having beans on Saturday night. And beans is something that takes a lot to put together, and people say, well, there's a bean supper at some church in the neighborhood, let's go.
When beans, that's a magic word, and they're there.
When I was a kid, that was always Saturday night's meal.
Yeah.
It was a tradition.
I think it's just it's a very easy supper to get.
Yeah.
Beans, beans, beans. Beans till you turn green.
Of course, there's something else about beans, too.
Well, I guess everybody has the same side effects, so they don't.
What he said is, guess it doesn't matter as long as everybody has the same side
That's
effect.
right. They all have the same supper.
That's why we have it on the open air here, you know. Nice breeze going.
Eat baked beans on Saturday night.
The love of beans and the love of bean suppers have kept the people in Lincoln faithfully coming to the River Drivers' Supper for 50 years. The supper is almost an art form by now, but there's one thing that's never quite settled.
Who does more of the work for this thing, the men or the women?
No comment.
Equal, I'd say.
Oh,
Equal.
men definitely. Oh, yes. Always say equal. Don't, because we get criticized for that. Always say equal.
That's right.
And will that be true?
Well, it might not be true, but it's all right for true north, because that isn't too accurate anyway.
Oh.
Sit right down in a folded chair. Smell that bean juice in the air. Eat beans, beans, beans.
There have been a few minor catastrophes over the years. The field has flooded, there have been a few rainy days, and Harley Sprowell tells of the year when the beans just didn't come out right.
So we went up there with this car and we snuck down in his store and we got 2 cases of beans. And we got the can opener out and we got enough heat in those beans so they were edible. And we brought them up here and they ate them, they didn't know the difference.
Don't make it too moist, you said, right?
Yeah. The other girls would get here.
Ida Whitney is the biscuit boss.
Squeeze them together. Oh, yeah, squeeze them together. Got 12?
It's 12.
All right. Now 4 o'clock. Everyone, let's go across.
Biscuits that make your mouth water.
Wouldn't you like to have one? They're broken. Have one. Those are delicious. Take one.
Isn't that a beautiful biscuit?
Oh, you better believe it. Where do you taste it?
Beans with an aroma that makes you sit up and take notice. George Fleming could hardly stand the wait. He was first in line.
They're not like your rotten beans you get. They have a lot of pork in them and very little sugar, if any. And other seasonings, mustard, pepper, salt.
Yeah.
They're very good.
Everybody's plate is clean. Except for me, I need more beans. Oh, beans, beans, beans.
From far and near they came. Some made a pilgrimage from out of state.
We come all the way from Connecticut every year for this.
Do you really?
Sure.
I'll have some of that ketchup, yeah.
And others, like Bill and Leanne Thornton, brought their kids to start them on the bean supper tradition.
Say, I love beans. Come on, Evan.
Mamas, bankers, kings, and queens. I don't know no one who don't love beans.
Fewer families follow the old Saturday night tradition of baked beans nowadays. But the art of the bean supper is still alive and well in many parts of Maine. So maybe there's still a little river driver in each of us.
Baked beans on Saturday night.
I'm Don Carrigan for True North. How old is old? When we think of someone 89 years old, we might think of this. But if you're Chester Grady, the only rocking chair is the one you left behind in the living room.
You can see the old blacksmith shop set right up there.
Okay.
And where you see those trees are.
Chet Grady, machinist, welder, and one-time country blacksmith, still works in his shop every day at age 89.
Now this machine I made all myself. And I made this arbor, see here. Cut the keyways and the lathes.
Chet has made a great many things in his long life. He's one of those people who made his community work. Now, there's probably not many people who can say that they're living in the same house they did when they were...
No, sleep in the same room they was born in. There wouldn't be many people who could do that, would they?
No, I wouldn't think so. Chet was born and raised on this farm in Belfast. His father was a blacksmith, and young Chet went to work early.
It was hard, rugged work, but you got very strong doing it because you stand on the horses, you know. And sometimes they'd weigh on you, and a few steps slipped out from under them, they'd fall right on the floor, they'd be laying so hard. But you had to develop a lot of good strength to show horses and things.
Chet was a football and basketball star. Work had made him strong, and running the 5 miles to school did even more.
And yeah, sometimes I'd walk and run, but a lot of times I'd run all the way. And it wasn't a hardship for me. I enjoyed it.
Now, a day like this, when it's snowing outside, you'd still have to hike into school.
Just the same, yeah.
Chet graduated from high school in 1926. Then he went to work to earn money for college.
I was getting $3 a day for doing it.
Working in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
At Wentworth Institute in Boston, he learned to be a machinist and a welder. And after he came home in 1932, Chet soon had the first electric welder in Waldo County.
I couldn't afford to buy one already made, so I took a Model A Ford engine, bought a generator, and built my own welder. And as luck would have it, it worked very good. It was as good a welder as I ever worked with.
And since then, Chet's long working life has never stopped. He worked for others and for himself. Over the years, he did work for practically every plant or factory or mill or farm in the area. He saved up and bought used equipment and kept it working, just like himself.
I pull on this thing to help start it. So they were starting without it before, so I wanted to put them over.
His shop is like a step back in time.
This is the first machine I ever bought.
But Chet says he can still do just about anything the young guys can do, plus a few things more.
You see that machine was around here before I was around here, before I was born.
This old machine is something most people today have never even seen. This is how you make the steel rim for a wooden wagon wheel. And Chet Grady may be one of the very few people in Maine who still remembers how it's done.
There isn't today. You wouldn't find many people would know. You see, I probably, it might be, you never know for record, but I probably am one of the few left that learned the trade from an old-time blacksmith. I don't believe there'd be many, because you see, I'm 89 years old.
Chet has a reputation as a master of metal, but he's known for some other things too. And one of them is being a bit tight with a dollar. It goes back to working in the woods for $3 a day to earn cash for college.
I've seen a time that I'd run from here into Belfast to go to the movies. It cost 35 cents to go then. And I'd think how hard I'd work for that money, and I'd turn around and come home. Wouldn't go. That makes people, they can't believe that today, you know.
And when asked if he's still a bit tight, even his wife Josephine has to laugh.
Chet's stock answer is if you say something about buying something or doing something, do we need it?
Tight? Would somebody call you tight?
Well, I didn't know, so they joke about it, but they don't really consider they am, I don't think, no.
You don't have the first penny you ever earned.
Oh, no, no.
But you've got a few of them.
I have put near that much sometimes. Yeah.
He doesn't get many calls to make wheel rims anymore, and the sawmills and other plants that once depended on Chet have modernized and now have their own machine shops. But he still does work for people who need it, everything from skidders to lawnmowers. And Chet has a bit of free time to think back on the old days and how work and life have changed.
When I was up in Boston, I went to Cambridge, Massachusetts. I went into a gymnasium up there. and there was a barbell laying there, and I just grabbed it like that, put it up over my head, one hand, weighed 140 pounds. And 2 or 3 of them get it around. They want to know if I was trained to be a cop, and I said no. They told me they'd only seen one other person that could have ever done that up there. Yeah, but it was 140 pounds. But you know, shoeing horses and working the woods and on the farms, why you build up a lot of physical strength that way.
Stayed with you,
and
too.
I never was any bigger than I am now. I weighed 145 pounds in high school, and I weigh the same thing now. Yeah.
Time is the master of us all, and even Chet Grady is slowing down a bit. He'll probably close the shop at the end of this year, but Chet will keep his tools handy just in case a neighbor needs some help. The mind and the hands simply know too much to stop.
It's no good to go sit down and do nothing. I hate to sit around and do nothing. I come up here with something to do, and I help. People make me feel that I help them a lot, because a lot of them say to me lots of times, "What?" They bring some little thing, I fix it for them. What are we going to do when you're going to do this, see? Well, nobody's indispensable. Somebody could do it, but anyway, it makes you feel so useful, they tell you that.
We begin this evening with a man named John Logan. Now, that name may not ring a bell for people living in Cumberland or York counties, but John Logan is famous in Aroostook County. Potato farmers depend on John. Now, you see, he was the host of WAGM Television's Potato Pickers Special. It's always been the #1 show during harvest time. Now, producer Peter Clowes knows John, and he shows us the making of a favorite son.
How does a guy from away become loved and dear to a community? A favorite son, you might say. Well, in Aroostook County, John Logan shows us how.
Well, I started out working in radio, and my first job was in Louisiana. Worked there for about 3 or 4 months till it got too hot for me down there. I mean, that didn't mean that I was being bad. Just meant that it was too darn hot down there. Didn't like it. And one day I read this piece in the paper that there was a job open in northern Maine. So when I saw that ad, boy, that was for me. And they said, "Oh, meet you in Boston." So I went to Boston, and he said, "Yeah, we've got a station, television and radio in northern Maine." And I said, "How far north?" And he said, "Way up next to the Canadian border." "Oh, wonderful. Have you got any woods?" "Oh, yeah, I got lots of woods. Hunting and fishing good." "Yes, wonderful." I said, "How soon do I start?" I've been here for over 35 years, I think, now. And I haven't regretted 1 minute of it. I love this place.
During the years that would follow, John would document thousands of hours of the county lifestyle and news events, producing shows that would highlight the many opportunities sportsmen experience in the county. At WAGM Television, for 48 weeks of the year, John would cover potato board meetings, the forestry industry, and a fishing story or two. But for the other 4 weeks, from mid-September to mid-October, John Logan had a chance to shine.
Your host for this morning's show, here's John Logan.
Good morning out there, world. Jed, here we go again. It's Friday. Your pants rip or what? That almost sounded bad. Well, I hope you'll be okay.
Oh, I doubt it.
Well, good morning out there, world. 4:30, we have a Friday to fool around with here most of the day. Potato picker special and our phone number.
Martha, good morning, everybody. Get up. It's time to get up and pick potatoes. We've been picking taters ever since we can. Picking in the morning, picking them by hand. Make a little money, have a little fun. Get up.
I worked potato picker special when I first got here. That was early in the morning. I remember people bringing in donuts and coffee and stuff like that.
Originally, radio's Picker Special was designed as a public service show, communicating farm info and connecting crews. Logan was the architect of the TV version, and the show became as much an Aroostook institution as the potato itself.
Well, I kind of talked them into it. And there was some resistance, a lot of resistance, in fact, at that time, that they didn't feel that it was a television program, it was a radio program, and that was all there was to it. But after a while, I managed to prevail somehow. They said, "How do you want to do it?" And that's when I said, "I want a kitchen. What I wanted to do was I wanted to have a program that was loose, entertaining, and informative all at the same time, with not too heavy a hand on the informative. Who the heck is awake at 4:30 in the morning? Come on, give me a break. You might be up for a little fun and some information, and definitely for some entertainment. Spud and Rotabeater were a lot of fun to have on the show. Those guys did a wonderful, wonderful job. Potato Blossom Queen that came on one day wanted me to help her play the piano. I can't play the piano. I don't have enough fingers to play the piano.
You've probably already noticed that John's on-air personality was not the typical guy in a suit presentation, and that's why John has such immense popularity. His friendly, casual style with the ability to kid around that always sends the audience to work happy.
Appreciate that. Look out the weather forecast. Now you can go home and have a nap. Okay, thank you.
And while you may think the Picker Special is just a chance to giggle for 2 hours in the morning, well, think again. In between the eggs and bacon, vital crew information is conveyed. Those seeking work or workers rely on the Picker Special. Ronnie Barnes, a fourth-generation potato farmer, explains.
It's easy for you to contact your people, your employees, and let them know if you've got a problem on the farm. You don't have to call everybody individual. They hear it, they listen to the Picker Special, they know when to show up or where to go, and it's a big plus.
John finished his tour on the Picker Special in 1990, moved on to Director of Quality Control for the Maine Potato Board, a vocation that kept him in front of the camera and close to the farming community. John's devotion to the county and the potato industry have earned him many awards, including the President's Award from the Maine Potato Board, and last summer, a sentiment from the Maine Legislature.
John's contributions not only on the Maine Potato Board, but also at WAGM Television, including quality control, marketing, merchandising, promotion of agriculture and forestry throughout Aroostook County, the state, and I dare say the nation.
After working for the potato industry for nearly 30 years, watching its good times and its bad, John Logan got some bad news of his own, commonly known as Lou Gehrig's disease.
Lou Gehrig's disease is a disease that takes your muscles away, all of them, to the point where you become totally helpless. The other part of this disease that really makes it bad is that your mind stays sharp all the time that you're going. So you know what's happening all the time. And you have these emotions inside of you that understands that this is what's going to happen. The obvious advice is to enjoy each day as it comes. You know, you're only given one day at a time to work on, so do the best you can.
John succumbed to Lou Gehrig's disease in November of 1997. But throughout the terms of his disease, he never stopped showing the attributes that made him a friend to every resident of Aroostook County. John's sense of humor was undaunted, and his love for his adopted community and its people endless. John's perseverance, commitment, and honesty have earned him the noble title of Aroostook County's favorite son.
When we first went out to dinner, when we were first married, he was surrounded by, how shall I put it, senior citizen ladies who told him how much they loved his show. And so you just kind of sat in the background and watched it all. And he enjoyed every minute of it, but they all loved him. It was like he was their son.
All right, fine, we will then. And we'll see you all tomorrow as well for another edition of Potato Picker Special, starting at 4:30 sharp. Have a good day.
And a friendly soul lives on in our memories. Hello, I'm glad you could join us for another edition of True North. We have a lot of ground to cover and a lot of interesting people for you to meet during the next half hour. First up, whatever happened to all of those old tube radios that families used to gather around to listen to programs like, oh, Amos and Andy and Burns and Allen and so many others? Well, the invention of television changed those radio days forever. But there is one Maine man who is doing everything he can to make sure that those old radios are not lost and forgotten. Producer John Greenman discovered that collecting and preserving old-time radios is becoming a very popular hobby. Just how popular? Only the shadow knows.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. North and South America, and all the ships and clippers at sea. Let's go to press. Flash, London.
My name is Spade, Sam Spade. License number 357896, issued by the Police Department of San Francisco.
As time goes by, the mental images attached to these sounds are fading to black. Although he can't reverse the inevitable, George Jones has a dream.
I'm hoping that there's other people out there that have the same interest that I do, that may know other people that have the same interest, that maybe we could form some kind of organization to save some of these things before they become non-existent.
Smart kid.
Yes.
Yes. What about Willie?
Well, he broke his back.
I'm glad to hear that.
Huh?
Broke his back? How'd he do that?
Well, on account of he's left-handed.
You see, George has a collection of old-time radios and other pioneer electronics. As a matter of fact, it fills his basement and a nearby storage building.
Good evening, friends of the inner sanctum.
My collection started originally from my radios that my father gave me, and I just built on that.
Program that brings you authentic police case history. Gangbusters.
George used to be in charge of electronic repairs at the Coast Guard station in Southwest Harbor.
This is a timer board for a fog signal control like they have on the buoys or on a lighthouse. This is a timer that operates the driver, which in turn operates the emitter, which makes the sound.
Presented to George Eli Jones on the occasion of retirement.
Not long ago, he retired so he could concentrate on his hobby full-time.
It's a lost art, it's a lost technology, or going to be lost if somebody doesn't save them and restore them and bring them back to life. And that's where I come in.
Ipana Toothpaste and Sal Hepatica present Mr. District Attorney, champion of the people, defender of truth, guardian of our fundamental rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
As a restorer, he wears lots of hats. Researcher, graphic artist, electronic engineer, and wood craftsman, to name just a few.
You have to have patience. That's the biggest skill you need, is patience and an eye for quality. You try to maintain this originality.
Here he is, the one, the only. Say the secret word and divide $100. It's a common word, something you see every day.
It's pretty hard to see, but you can see places where I have where the original wood stops and where pieces I put in. But unless you was really looking, you wouldn't know.
Ladies and gentlemen, it pays to be ignorant.
George says this old Atwater Kent Model 53 is a rare find. Named after its manufacturer, who used to summer on Mount Desert Island, this Atwater Kent came from New York for some TLC.
Would you like to see it turned on?
You dare to?
Oh yeah, I had it going last night. Now, let me plug this thing in. You should see the tubes glowing here in a moment. Amazing, isn't it?
The audio from this report is coming through a speaker. Back in the early days, a speaker was called a reproducer, and this one from 1918 is one of the first.
Everybody could sit around it and not have to share their earphones.
This ended up causing a sociological revolution, since for the first time, groups could sit down and listen to broadcasts together.
they grew up in that era when everybody gathered around the radio in the parlor and listened to The Shadow.
Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The Shadow knows.
And world events as they happen.
This is Trafalgar Square. The noise that you hear at the moment is the sound of the air raid sirens.
The airwaves will never be the same, but for people like George Jones, just to have a working piece of nostalgia in your home is enough to bring back all sorts of memories.
Henry Aldrich, coming, Mother.
I'm John Greenman for True North.
Next up, an iron horse in the middle of the North Woods.
About every canoe guide makes this a stop on his trip.
But first, Steve Stuff takes us to Wiscasset, and a place where music comes in a box.
The sounds of the musical Wonder House in Wiscasset. I'm here with Danilo Konvalenka, who is the owner and curator of the museum. This is beautiful, Danilo. How did this come to be? How so many?
Well, everything starts with one piece, and this started with one piece at an auction in Washington, D.C. Actually, it started back in Europe when I first heard a music box and said, someday, somewhere in this world, I will find one of these. And then I came to the U.S. in 1956, and then 57 started the collection.
And from one came all these.
From one came all
What period of time would most of these be from?
Primarily from 1840 to 1910, because 1910 was pretty much the end of the music box because of the phonograph coming into the picture.
And from what part of the world are they from?
Switzerland first and foremost, and then Germany, France, and Austria.
Okay. This is beautiful. All of these are, in fact, but this here. What do you say to someone who says that this reminds them of a coffin?
I say, like I usually do, which is if you are at a dinner party and they serve you soup out of a fancy soup tureen, do you say this looks like a chamber pot?
I see. So that's the answer.
It would not be very polite.
Is there any possibility that we could hear some?
Why,
from
certainly
this?
you can hear them all. You have to stay about 2 months.
All right, all right.
Which
it's
one?
Beautiful. This one right here would be wonderful.
This was made for an American family in 1895, but it was made in Switzerland for that American family to play mostly American music.
Wonderful. Danilo, thank you again very much.
You're
Patsy.
welcome.
Here, once again, is Patsy Wiggins.
Now, a music box is like a box of chocolates. You're never quite sure what's inside until you open it. And now we're off to the North Woods, where we'll find a bit of Maine history rusting away. They're called iron horses. They remain a puzzlement for generations of canoers and snowmobilers who have come across them. Producer Don Carrigan came upon the iron horses and wondered how they came to be there, still on the tracks of time.
It's about as close to the middle of nowhere as you can get. Yet this narrow neck of land used to be home to scores of people and a fascinating part of the lore and legend of the North Woods. This is one of the places where Maine changed forever, where machinery really took over the logging industry. The relics of that time are still here, and a collection of people from all over Maine is trying to preserve them.
This was a fairly good-sized town in the absolute middle of nowhere.
Right, exactly. Churchill itself had about 18 families that were living there. And it was, approximately 40 to 45 miles from the Quebec border, which would have been the nearest town.
Terry Harper's story goes back at least 30 years, to the time when the Allagash Wilderness Waterway was formed. 7-year-old Terry and his sister were brought down from Presque Isle by their father. It was love at first sight.
The idea of how much people did in such a remote area, it's like a mystery that as you dive into it, it just keeps unfolding. You never know what you're going to find.
This land has a story to tell, a story of wood and water. The Telos War, a lumberman's battle, had everything to do with water and what direction logs would float to the mill. The Allagash and Chamberlain and Eagle Lakes flowed north, but the big mills were south. Dams and channels changed the flow of Chamberlain Lake, so logs could move to the Penobscot and on to the sawmills. A way was needed to get logs from one lake to another and into the proper branch of the river. East branch for saw logs, then west branch for pulpwood. The answer was found on this strip of land. First, the tramway, a 6,000-foot cable system powered by steam, carrying logs on tracks from Eagle Lake to Chamberlain. And a few years later, the Eagle Lake and West Branch Railroad, a 12-mile rail line in the middle of the woods. They were feats of engineering, strength, and determination, and they have fascinated generations of travelers through the Allagash.
You would be surprised at the tourists that come up here to see these. About every canoe guide makes this a stop on his trip. And people have told me about them, and it's just a legendary thing for this part of the country.
Drain pipe here.
And now the members of the Allagash Alliance are working to make sure future generations will also be able to see these things and wonder about those who built them. They have spent the past year stabilizing the old steam locomotives, jacking them up, digging out, getting ready to lay new rail, and provide a secure base.
Let's tell it happened. We get ready to set this thing down. We're going to have a brand spanking new shiny penny for that year. We're going to set it right underneath the wheel. So maybe 100 years from now, somebody will know that we were there. How'd they get there?
They are clearing parts of the old rail line, pulling a century of memories from the grasp of trees and undergrowth.
The locomotive right down there about 100 yards from here. There's really not much to cut. We ought to do it. Be a heck of a nice picture.
Yeah, Tom thinks.
The old trains are the first goal, the biggest and most impressive of the artifacts. The trains were brought here in the late 20s, hauled over the ice from Canada by a man known as King LaCroix.
He was the boss of the woods. The big difference between LaCroix and the operators that came before him, or actually even operated at the same time, was he believed in treating his people right. They had proper housing, they had proper food, and he was very honest with them. He was one of the first highly mechanized lumber operators. Basically, when he went to do an operation, he did it all out. And that's what made him so successful. In essence, in the Allagash, he was driving logs both ways. He had pulpwood going south to the mills in Millinocket, and he had the long logs and lumber going north to at one time what was the largest sawmill in New England up on the St. John.
Alliance members also plan to preserve a portion of the remarkable tramway, now slowly sinking into the soft earth.
This is a piece of Maine history, fascinating piece of Maine history that I would assume most people in Maine are ignorant of.
To a certain extent, because it happened in such a remote area, and the traces of it are so few. One of the standing policies was that when you finished a logging operation, you destroyed the buildings that were left, and you just left, and the forest came back in. We're very fortunate in the Allagash that some of this remained for one quirk or another. You've got the tramway right where it was left. It just basically rotted right there. The locomotives, everything was left. When they shut that operation down, nobody realized that they were not coming back.
This won't be a museum or a park, because this is the Allagash, a place dedicated to wilderness. But people have lived and worked in this wilderness for centuries. They and their machines are part of it.
This is we're protecting the Allagash waterway, and I think keeping these trains from falling over and getting them preserved under a building, I think is going to be a great thing for the waterway. So people can come in and look at them maybe long after we're gone. They'll still be able to come and see them sitting here.
You're protecting part of what's here.
Right, yeah.
These old machines stand as monuments to the people who struggled to make a living from a rugged land. Waterway managers and the Allagash Alliance want to make sure that visitors will always be able to see the tracks of time. I'm Don Carrigan for True North.
Don Carrigan joins us now for a little bit more about this fascinating project. Just fascinating.
Really is.
It really is amazing. I can only wonder what it's like to suddenly come across these iron horses. Now, describe when you first saw them.
Well, I had heard about these for years before I first saw the trains, which was probably 3 or 4 years ago. And it was in the winter. I had never been able to canoe in there. There's really, for practical purposes, you get there by canoe or maybe boat in the summer, by snowmobile in the winter. Otherwise, it's a mighty long and nasty walk.
Right.
So I was in on snowmobile. We were up there fishing, and I knew they were there. But the first time we went in there, and this really is the middle of nowhere, and you come around a little corner, and there are these huge railroad locomotives in the middle of this little clearing, in the middle of the woods, the middle of no place.
Amazing.
And it's an amazing sight. And this last time when I saw them this fall, the last time I was up there, you come around the corner, you know they're there, but what additionally took my breath away is here these things are. They've been jacked up in the air 6 feet on wooden blocks, and it's an impressive sight.
A little bit of Twilight Zone almost, kind of this eerie feeling a little bit.
Saying, what's going on?
Right. Talk about now what happens now. These people are so passionate about preserving this, and it's taken a while. It's been 60 years they were sitting out in the woods under the brush.
That's right. The Allagash Alliance folks they hope that sometime next summer they will have stone ballast in and new rails and ties underneath the locomotives. They'll be able to lower them back down, so they'll be on a firm footing, and they'll stay there. They're going to try to clean up around the area. They're not making a fancy site out of it because it still is the Allagash Wilderness Waterway. But they hope to have a few signs, some interpretive things, so when people come in, they'll see what's there and know. And then they're also hoping to fix up a little short section of the old cable tramway so that people can go in and look, not have to crash through the bushes, and be able to appreciate really the work, the engineering skill, the foresight that did this a century ago.
Great story. Thanks, Don.